Hello and welcome to the Holon Network podcast for April 27th of 2023. This week I have joining me,
Hey, I'm Digital Tinker.
and I'm Gatorbite. Hey, Digital, how's it going this week, my friend?
Been a little bit quieter and kind of nice.
Yeah? I'm super
I
glad to
had
hear that.
quite a few things going on at work that just one thing after the other, and they're starting to let up.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, we're gonna go through and talk about this week's cybersecurity news, privacy, other projects that we're working on. I know for work on my side of the house, we'll have a article to cover it, but my work week was a little bit crazy. Anything that you want to jump in and talk about before we jump into our stories, or do you just want to jump on in?
I'm ready to jump right in when you are.
Let's do it. Hey, Digital, did you realize that we only have 104 days, 12 hours, 8 minutes, and 53 seconds till DEF CON?
Unfortunately,
It's getting there. Hope everybody has got their rooms booked because that's what I'm doing after our call tonight. All right, first thing up, let's go to our Bitcoin price. It is currently at $29,499.48. Gold per ounce. I want to refresh this because it looks very similar to what it was last week. This is fresh. It's $1,999.90 per ounce. Let's see. Oil per barrel is $74.80. The pterodactyls are out. The Nazguls are coming next. And Dogecoin is currently 0.08018. Getting into this week in vulnerabilities, as always, going to our Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency vulnerability summary for the week of April 17th. Digital, on this wonderful list of things, what did you see come across that grabbed your attention?
are we actually going through stream?
I've got a spinning box. How about you? I see green on
I've
OBS.
got a frozen countdown.
You got a frozen countdown? I'm going to refresh here and see. Do, 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 do. Yeah, it looks like it's just sitting there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oop. It just jumped down to 24 seconds. 21 seconds. It's just way behind. That's super delayed, even though I'm green on my side. So theoretically, from my countdown timer that I'm looking at right now, it's 4 minutes behind schedule. From what I'm seeing the countdown on YouTube live right now, and what I'm seeing OBS still count as the countdown.
Yeah, it just started for me.
It just? Okay.
So I guess it's going just way behind.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So there is a really big delay, and it's not on my ISP side this time. So for folks listening live, awesome. Thanks for joining us. If you are, great. If not, leave a comment in the section below so we know if and when you've gone through and looked at any of the stories for this week. Going into the cybersecurity news and high vulnerabilities, what did you see that caught your eye this week, Digital?
Asa Abloy, which you wouldn't necessarily think, but of course they have RFID controlled locks. So they have Control ID RHID. A vulnerability which was classified as problematic was found in Control ID RHID 23.3.19.0. This affects an unknown part of the file v2 customers db operator.svc/a of the component edit handler. The manipulation of the argument email lead to SQL injection. It is possible to initiate the attack remotely. The identifier VDB-225921 was assigned to this vulnerability. Note the vendor was contacted early about this disclosure but did not respond in any way. Always great to hear. That was a score of a 9.8 and a CV 2023 2043.
Lovely. All right. I was like, hey, where have I heard that? Asa Abloy. Oh, that's right. Lockpicking lawyer. Gotta love it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's continuing to scan on through. There's a Linksys device with an E8450 firmware. Linksys AX3200.1.1.00 is vulnerable to an OS command injection by authenticated users via shell meta characters to the diagnostics traceroute page. This is a CVSS score of an 8.8, CVE of 2022 38841.
Google Chrome has a type confusion in version 8 prior to 112.0.5615.121. Allowed a remote attacker to potentially exploit heap corruption via crafted HTML page. Chromium's security severity is high. It has a score of 8.8 and CV 2023 2033.
Looks like our stream is just now catching up. it's a little bit behind. It's just starting the high vulnerabilities, so that's fun. Continuing to scroll on down. Ooh, okay. For you home labbers out there, Oracle's VM VirtualBox had an issue. A vulnerability in Oracle's VM VirtualBox product of Oracle Virtualization Component Core. Supported versions that are affected are prior to 6.1.44 and prior to 7.0.8. Easy exploitable vulnerability allows a high privileged attacker with login to let's see. Easily exploitable vulnerability allows high privileged attacker with logon to the infrastructure where Oracle VM VirtualBox executes a compromised Oracle VM VirtualBox. While the vulnerability is in Oracle VM VirtualBox, attacks may be significantly impact additional products, including a scope change. Successful attacks of this vulnerability can result in the takeover of Oracle's VM VirtualBox. CVSS 3.1 base score of an 8.2. This is affecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability impacts. CVSS score of an 8.2, CVE of 2023 21990. Looks like there's a second
For
one.
those using,
Go ahead.
Nope. Say if you're using AutoCAD 2023, be careful with X_B files, as there's at least 5 different vulnerabilities that lead to crashes or the ability to read sensitive data or execute arbitrary code in the context of the current process. They're all 7.8s and can be CV 2023 27912, 913, 914, 915, and 29067.
Cool deal. Looks like there's a secondary following up on the Oracle VM VirtualBox as well. It's a 7.8 CVE of 2023 21987. And God help you, if you're running Oracle Solaris, looks like versions 10 and 11 had a handful of vulnerabilities, ranging from 7.7 and a little bit further up. 7.8 on the CVSS scores. Those two CVEs are 2023 21948, and the second one is CVE 2023 21985. Scrolling
Just
up.
scrolling too, there's a number for various Juniper products, including Juno S, and a couple for different versions of Oracle, including their uh, Java SE JRE and the MySQL databases.
And for those typically running like Minecraft, Java edition at least, you needed that JRE to run Java. Now that
So
was
this looks like it's a different version than that one.
okay.
This is more an enterprise product.
Got it. Okay, good deal. So not important for home gamers. We're good to go. All right. And there's one more for Solaris as well. CVE 2023 21896. We ready to continue to move on then?
Yep.
Cool. As always, you can go check out more with the National Vulnerability Database and or osv.dev. Let's get into our first story for tonight. And I think this first one's mine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So RTM Locker's first Linux ransomware strain target NAS and ESXi hosts. This is reported on the Hacker News on April 27th. Threat actors behind RTM Locker have developed a ransomware strain that's capable of targeting Linux machines, making the group's first foray into the open source operating system. It's a Locker ransomware infects Linux, NAS, or ESXi host and appears to be inspired by Baybuck ransomware leaked source code. Upticks said in a new report published on Wednesday that it's a combination of ECDH on curve 25519 asymmetric encryption and ChaCha20 symmetric encryption to encrypt files. RTM Locker was first documented by Trellix earlier this month, describing the adversary as a private ransomware as a service provider. It has its roots in the cybercrime group called Read the Manual, RTM, that's known to be active since at least 2015. The group is notable for deliberately avoiding high-profile targets such as critical infrastructure, law enforcement, and hospitals so as to draw a little attention as possible. It also leverages affiliates to ransom victims, in addition to leaking stolen data should they refuse to pay up. The Linux flavor is specifically geared to single out ESXi hosts by terminating all virtual machines running on a compromised host prior to commencing the encryption process. The exact initial infector employed to deliver this ransomware is currently unknown. It is statically compiled and stripped, making reverse engineering more difficult and allowing the binary to run on more systems. This encryption function also uses p-threads, aka POSIX threads, to speed up execution. Following successful encryption, victims are urged to contact the support team within 48 hours via talks or risk getting their data published. Decrypting a file locked with RTM Locker requires a public key appended to the end of the encrypted file of the attacker's private key. The development comes as Microsoft reveals that vulnerable papercut servers are being actively targeted by threat actors to deploy CL0P and Lockbit ransomware. All right, take it away.
So speaking of papercut, that's a 9.8 severity flaw currently under attack. Fun part was, it was patched in March, but due to slow patch cycles in many different companies and colleges and universities, it's being exploited.
Womp womp.
So it's exploit code for a critical printer software vulnerability that became publicly available on Monday in a release that may exacerbate threat of malware attacks that have already been underway for the past 5 days. The vulnerability resides in print management software known as Papercut, which the company's website says has more than 100 million users from 70,000 organizations. When the post went live, Shodan's search engine showed that close to 1,700 instances of the software were exposed to the internet. Late Wednesday, Papercut warned that a critical vulnerability it patched in the software in March was under active attack against machines that had yet to install the March update. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2023 27350 carries a severity rating of 9.8 out of a possible 10. It allows an unauthenticated attacker to remotely execute malicious code without needing to log in or provide a password. A related vulnerability tracked as CV 2023-27351 with a rating of 8.2 allows unauthenticated attackers to extract usernames, full names, email addresses, and other proprietary sensitive data from unpatched servers. 2 days after Papercut revealed the attacks, security firm Huntress reported that it found threat actors exploiting CV 2023-27350 to install two pieces of remote management software, one known as Terra and the other Synchro, on unpatched servers. Evidence then showed that the threat actors used the remote management software to install malware known as TrueBot. TrueBot is linked to a threat group known as Silence, which has ties to a ransomware group known as Clop. Previously, Clop used TrueBot in the wild attacks that exploited a critical vulnerability in software known as Go Anywhere. While the ultimate goal of the current activity leveraging Papercut software is unknown, these links, albeit somewhat circumstantial, to a known ransomware entity are concerning. Huntress researchers wrote in their report on Friday, potentially the access granted through Papercut's exploitation could be used as a foothold leading to follow-on movement within the victim network and ultimately ransomware deployment. There's also a video from John Strand talking about the proof of concept exploitation of Papercut.
Strand or Hammond?
Hammond, sorry.
All good. I'm like, I know this face.
Mm-hmm. I had it wrong.
All
Saw
good.
the face and name popped in it, and it was just the wrong name.
Nope, you're good, dude. No worries.
Yeah, I was talking to someone like, so what software did this affect for this stupid name? Like, what are you talking about? It's called the software's Papercut. Oh, I thought that was like
The exploit name.
Heartbleed or
Exactly
Spectre.
what I thought
Yeah.
too, for what it's worth.
Like, nope, the software did it itself.
It did it to itself. I gotcha. Gotta love that lovely Shodan map.
Mm-hmm.
Cool deal. All right, rolling on to our next one. Just another one from Hacker News. VMware releases critical patches for Workstation and Fusion software. This is on April 26th. VMware released updates to resolve multiple security flaws impacting its Workstation and Fusion software, most critical of which could allow a local attacker to achieve code execution. Vulnerability tracked as CVE 2023-20869 with a CVSS score of a 9.3 is described as a stack-based buffer overflow vulnerability that resides in the functionality of sharing host Bluetooth devices with a virtual machine. A malicious actor with local administration privileges on a virtual machine may exploit this issue to execute code as the virtual machine's VMX process running on the host. It also patched VMware an out-of-bounds read vulnerability affecting the same feature, CVE 2023-20870, CVSS score of a 7.1, that could be abused by a local adversary with local admin privileges to read sensitive information contained in the hypervisor memory from a virtual machine. Both vulnerabilities were demonstrated by researchers from Star Labs on the third day of the Pwn to Own hacking contest held in Vancouver last month, earning them an $80,000 reward. VMware also resolved two additional shortcomings, which include a local privilege escalation flaw with CVE 2023-20871, CVSS score of a 7.3, and in Fusion, an out-of-bounds read-write vulnerability in the SCSI CD-DVD device emulation, which had a CVE 2023-20872 with a CVSS score of a 7.7. While the former could enable a bad actor read and write access to the host operating system to obtain root access, the latter could result in arbitrary code execution. Malicious attacker with the access to a virtual machine that has a physical CD-DVD drive attached and configured to use a virtual SCSI controller might be able to exploit this vulnerability to execute code on the hypervisor from a virtual machine. The flaws have been addressed in Workstation version 17.0.2 and Fusion version 13.0.1, and as a temporary workarounds for CVE 2023 20869 and CVE 2023 20870, VMware is suggesting that users turn off Bluetooth support on the virtual machine. For mitigating CVE of 2023 20872, it is advised to remove the CD DVD device from the virtual machine or configure the virtual machine not to use a virtual SCSI controller. The development comes less than a week after the virtualization service provider fixed a critical deserialization flaw impacting multiple versions of the ARA operations for logs. CVE 2023 20864 with a CVSS score of a 9.8. And the last one in our vulnerability section, Kubernetes RBAC exploited in a large-scale campaign for cryptocurrency mining. This is reported on the Hacker News, April 21st. Large-scale attack campaign discovered in the wild has been exploiting Kubernetes or K8's role-based access control RBAC to create backdoors and run cryptocurrency miners. The attack also named Demon Sets to take over and hijack resources of a K8 cluster they attack. The cloud security firm Aqua said in its report shared with the Hacker News. The Israeli company, which dubbed the attack RBAC Buster, said it found 60 exposed K8 clusters that have been exploited by the threat actor behind this campaign. The attack chain commenced with the attacker gaining initial access via a misconfigured API server, followed by checking for evidence of a competing miner malware on the compromised server, and then using RBAC to set up its persistence. The attacker created a cluster role with a near admin level privilege. Next, the attacker created a service account, kube-controller, in the kube-system namespace. Lastly, the attacker named cluster role binding the cluster role with the service account to create a strong and inconspicuous persistence. In the intrusion observed against K8 honeypots, the attackers attempted to weaponize the deliberately exposed AWS access keys to obtain an entrenched foothold into the environment, steal data, and escape the confines of the cluster. The final step of the attack entailed the threat actor creating a daemon set to deploy a container image hosted on Docker. It's kube, or the spelling of this is KUBERNTESIO/kube-controller :1.0.1 on all the nodes. The container, which has been pulled 1,499 times since it's uploaded 5 months ago, harbors a cryptocurrency miner. See, they're just doing like a typo squatting attack on here. It looks like it's completely legitimate, which is the crazy part. Smart for their side of the house. Going back to the article, the container named this in case the typo squatting that impersonates a legitimate Kubernetes ESIO account. The image also mimics the popular Kube Controller Manager container image, which is a critical component of the control plane running within the pod of every master node, responsible for detecting and responding to node failures. Interestingly, some of the tactics described by its campaign bears similarly to other illicit cryptocurrency mining operations that also took advantage of daemon sets to mint Darrow and Monero. It's not clear whether the two sets of attacks are related. And food for thought, if you're running a Kubernetes cluster out there and you want to be able to detect if this is happening, there's a free upstream version, full disclosure. It is supported by Red Hat. StackRox is completely open source that you can go through and actually detect exactly this happening. So go check that out if you're running one of those Kubernetes clusters at home. Not a paid sponsorship. Go ahead, Digital. What's our next section?
So we're into the This Week in Privacy or Lack Thereof, where we occasionally talk about where, like, if you're using Facebook and Twitter, that you are the product. Whatever data you put in there, they're using to collect and then sell to advertisers based on your interests. Now it's getting a little bit more literal because Stack Overflow joins Reddit and Twitter in charging AI companies for training data.
Huh.
So the whole idea is that ChatGPT has been able to just gather everything on the internet because there's been no rules on anything like that. All these companies are like, hey, that's our data. We want that money. So they're now charging AI platforms for access to their API to be able to pass all this data into their AI algorithms and learning data. So even more, you are now the product.
No kidding. And we're all surprised by raise of hands, right?
And there's no hands to be seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, all hands are down. Oh, fantastic. All right, that's the one for privacy, right? You got the next section too. Go
Yep.
for it. Take it away.
So on the security side, Google Authenticator now supports Google account synchronization. It's kind of amazing it's taken this long, but a lot of people actually like that about Google Authenticator, where it didn't have the normal Google fluff of give us all your data. It's just, yeah, here to go. Here it is. It works. Have fun. But now they've started to allow you to sync your two-factor authentication codes through your account, which of course there's trade-offs there where now if your phone breaks, you don't have to reset all your passwords and figure out how to do all that because you'll be able to sync everything back together. But if someone gets access to your Google account, then they have all your 2FA as well. So you have to evaluate your risk models and figure out what works best for you. Unfortunately, Google did not necessarily look at their risk models because the account sync was not encrypted.
Womp.
So thus, as you were syncing all your data, it was all able to be captured and read and stolen. So now Google has reevaluated and is adding end-to-end encryption.
Just a nice tight little bow there.
Mm-hmm.
So, any recommendations for
Yeah,
folks
this
who
is
had
fun.
started moving stuff over at this point digital?
Into the Google 2FA.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything specific because it's the in transit's the problem.
Okay.
So it's preferably only make sure the syncing happens when you're on a trusted network, such as your home, or maybe use a VPN whenever it happens to make sure that it is encrypted that way. And then hopefully the mess that is the internet will keep any captures from going on there, but who knows who's rerouting BGP